I'll tell you what. I'll tell you about when Renee first started fishing, because she's down there fishing this morning. So all her life, most everything she cared for is just riding horses, and that's how we met. Riding horses on competitive trail riding. But one time we had to get together over at our lease, and I had a friend of mine. His name was Ed, and him and I went over there, and we were kind of hosting the thing. There's a bunch of friends of ours and people from the lease. And after we got through eating, we went down to the lake, which was about a 20-acre lake, but it was stocked with brim or bluegills and lots of bass. I mean, they were Florida hybrid bass. A real good place to fish. But Renee didn't care anything about fishing. She was just along to help with the whole thing. Well, Ed had an operation and he was getting hot, so I had to take him to get him cool. Well, I told Renee, I said, I got to take Ed home. She said, okay, I'll stay with everybody, because we had to stay there because we were the lease members. And I said, hey, you want to fish? She said, that's another hobby I don't care anything about learning. I said, well, look, I'm going to leave a spinning rod and a fishing pole here in case anybody needs one. They can fish. Well, that afternoon, I'd taken Ed home, and she came in late that afternoon, and she was all excited. She said, I caught more fish than anybody. I said, I thought you didn't care about fishing. She said, well, I kind of liked it. I was catching fish, and it was fun. So from there, we have a creek, Little Cypress Creek, on the backside of our land. That's our north border. And one day she says, hey, would you mind if we go back down to the creek and fish tomorrow morning? I said, no, that's fine. And so I guess we get out there about 9 o'clock and we fish all morning. About lunchtime, I said, hey, it's time for lunch. And she said, well, let me fish a little bit more, and you go on back. I said, well, I might take a nap. She said, okay, I'll try to be quiet when I come in. So I woke up from my nap. It was about 3 o'clock. She still hadn't showed back up. Well, I wait, and finally the sun starts going down. I thought, I better go check on her. So I drove the four-wheeler back there, and where I left her, she wasn't there. I hollered for her and couldn't find her. So I started following her tracks back to the east along the creek. And I came across this fish stringer. I pulled this fish stringer up, and there's several fish on it. So I stuck it back in the dirt, kept walking, following her tracks in the mud, and came across another fish stringer. It had fish on it. And we've got about probably 1,500 feet of, 1,700 feet of a creek frontage. And I found 3 fish stringers. And finally, after me calling all that time, I heard her. And she was way down on the east end of our property. And she was, I said, look, you've been out here since 9 o'clock this morning fishing. And I found all these stringers. We need to pick them up, go clean these fish, and we got to eat supper. Well, we did that. And after supper, we were sitting there, and she says, let's go back down there at the creek tonight and fish. I'm like, woman, you are crazy. But she wanted to do that. And so we went back down there with some lanterns. We fished till about midnight. And she's been hooked on fishing ever since. First we bought a bass boat, and then we bought some kayaks. And a friend of mine that had a kayak, he says, you know, me and my wife's got a double kayak. And I said, well, we got 2 singles. And he says, well, a double's fun. I said, yeah, but if I want to be here, she wants to be over there. And so this is the best of both worlds. She can go wherever she wants to, and I can go wherever I want to. I like to catfish and crappie fish, and she likes to bass fish. In fact, I drove by the boat ramp down there where she's watching the pelicans and fishing this morning, and she had caught 2 bass, and she was so proud of herself. One of them, she's telling me how much one pulled so much. But that's a story about Renee learning to fish.